welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we're going to talk about another accessibility tale. Or I guess, wow, the lighting is changing dramatically. I'm actually filming a little bit later in the day today, and currently I'm relying on the light from my window in order to film these videos. So I apologize in advance if the lighting changes drastically throughout this video. And yeah, but anyway, I can't do anything about the sun. So yeah, so this video, I mean, I'm gonna talk about accessibility, obviously, because it's an accessibility tales video, but it is a little bit different because I'm actually gonna talk about multiple experiences. So basically, like a lot of children do when they're kids. Well, people, I mean, when they're kids, whatever. Anyway, when you're a kid, a lot of times you attend summer camp. And as a disabled child, attending summer camp looked a little bit different than it did for other kids. There were actually 3 different camps that I had the opportunity to attend when I was a kid. I attended a camp that was made specifically for disabled kids that had my condition. So it was a camp exclusively for children with muscular dystrophy. Then I also attended a summer camp that was a Girl Scout camp because I was a Girl Scout, and so I went to a Girl Scout camp with my troop when I was in elementary school. And then I also had the opportunity to attend a camp for choir kids, which I had to actually audition for, and then I was accepted and I got a scholarship and all this stuff. But I actually ended up not going to that camp. But I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. So camp number 1. So when I was a kid, I attended the camp for kids with muscular dystrophy. And that camp I went to, I believe you could start going when you turned 5 years old. So I started to attend the first year that you were able to attend. So yeah, I think I was either 5 or 6 years old. So I started attending that camp, and I attended that camp until I was 17. Because I think once you turned 18, you were no longer able to go to that camp. You had to go to the camp, summer camp for adults, which was 18 and up. So anyway, yeah, I attended this summer camp from kindergarten to end of high school. And yeah, it was a really phenomenal experience. Fantastic. It was really fun. I made a lot of friends there, learned a lot about myself, about my condition, and just how I would have to navigate life living with my disability. It wasn't like workshops or anything like that, but it's like you learn a lot from experience, you know? Basically, the way that this summer camp worked was that each camper was assigned or paired up with a volunteer. You could start volunteering at 16 years old. So the youngest was 16, and that was just like the starting age. So yeah, so you were assigned and paired up with a volunteer, and that volunteer was your assistant or caregiver for that entire week. So each cabin had, I want to say, about 5 campers in it and 5 assistants, and then there was a house parent just there in case you needed extra help or supervision or assistance or had questions or whatever. So it was really fun, and I made a lot of friends, and I was able to stay in a cabin for a week with my other campers. And yeah, and they had a lot of different like adapted activities. So they had horseback riding, canoeing, or kayaking, I guess it technically was kayaking. Whatever. I don't know a lot about aquatic sports. So anyway, but yeah. So they had kayaking and canoeing, horseback riding, tree climbing, which was my favorite activity. Yeah, tree climbing was probably my favorite activity. And then also horseback riding. Those are my two favorite activities. But anyway, so they had archery, swimming, we played hockey, like floor hockey, soccer, baseball. They had tons of adapted activities. Arts and crafts, an unlimited ice cream machine. So yeah, it was so fun. I definitely recommend going to camp as a kid. If you're disabled, like, especially if you're disabled. Because, like, honestly, it was great because I was able to learn more about what my physical limitations were. And I also learned a lot about how I needed to adapt things for myself so that I was able to do more than I thought I was actually able to do. Yeah, and then I had like various assistants that helped me over the years. And just like, it's really important as a disabled kid to learn how to advocate for yourself, and also just to learn how to voice your needs to someone else other than like a family member, and to learn how to take care of yourself by explaining everything to another person. That's, I guess, like if you're a parent and you're wondering whether or not you should allow your disabled child to go to camp by themselves, I think it's a really good idea. Once you're an adult, you have to learn how to explain all of your care needs to another person. And also just to learn like what you can and can't do and how to adapt things for yourself. It's like a safer environment to do it at camp than it is to like do it once you've gone away to college or you start living on your own. It's like a perfect, I don't want to say a little bubble, but it's like a really safe place to explore different ways to adapt things. And you also like learn from a lot of the other campers. But yeah, I'll leave a link to a few different summer camps down below in case you want to check them out. There are a few different ones for kids, and there are also a few different ones for adults too. The adult ones are also great because it's basically it's a little bit different because like there are still a lot of adapted activities, but it's more like you're going away on vacation with friends. So it's still really fun as an adult. Okay, and then the second camp I went to was for Girl Scouts. Now this one was a little bit different because it wasn't exclusively for disabled people. So they had to adapt things for me specifically instead of it already being adapted when I arrived. So this was interesting. It was really interesting because the cabin was accessible. So the cabin was wheelchair accessible, which was actually kind of surprising. But the cabin was wheelchair accessible. So I was able to get into the bathroom in my wheelchair and all that stuff. Granted, I was in elementary school, so my needs back then were a little bit different than they are now because my wheelchair was smaller, so it was easier to get into smaller places, and I was transferred differently than I am today. So, yeah, but I mean, the cabin was accessible, and basically, we stayed in the cabin so I stayed in the cabin with the rest of my Girl Scout troop. And then so my mom was one of the Girl Scout leaders, and then we had 2 other troop leaders that also stayed in the cabin with us. Because yeah, each cabin had a different troop. And all of the buildings were accessible. So I was able to get into all the buildings, like the cafeteria, activity center, all that stuff. That was all wheelchair accessible. Yeah, and I remember we had like a performance that we had to do at the end of the weekend, and the stage we had to get up on was wheelchair accessible. So that was great. The only thing that I think was really interesting was that a lot of the activities, like the sports activities, I was not able to do because they were not adapted. And like, I understand not adapting like a team sport because it's a little hard to like adapt soccer when everyone has like different physical ability levels. So I get that, but they didn't adapt the kayaking. They didn't adapt the archery. They didn't adapt the tree climbing. None of that stuff was adapted. So I really missed out on a lot of the activities and team building exercises that a lot of the other kids were able to participate in that I was not able to participate in. And I think it was just kind of odd because like, here's my issue. So I think that it's great that they have a separate summer camp for disabled kids. But I also think it's really important to include disabled kids in summer camp that isn't specifically for disabled children. It's just like about inclusion and also just teaching kids about disability in a setting that isn't like specifically for disabled people only. Yeah, I just think it's really important that like summer camps figure out a way to include disabled kids in their programs. Like, we shouldn't only have camps for disabled kids and then camps for non-disabled kids and then that just be the standard. Yeah, because I ran into this issue like another time. This was the last camp that I applied to. So I applied to this other camp when I was in middle school, and it was a music camp. It was a music camp, and you had to audition for it, and you could get scholarships and all this stuff. So I got into the summer camp. I did the audition. So all of that was adapted and for me, so I could participate in the audition process. All of that was accessible. Then, I was accepted into the program. I went to the camp. They did a tour of the campground for me, and it was all wheelchair accessible, except the issue was that the cabin, they would not allow a caregiver to stay in the cabin with me like they did at the Girl Scout camp and the summer camp for disabled kids. And so I would have to stay in the cabin separate from all the other kids. And it would just be me and my caregiver in that other cabin. And I would still be like assigned a cabin, quote unquote. So like I would have an assigned table to sit at during meals and all that stuff. But like, you make your friendships when you're in the cabin. Like, that's where a lot of the camaraderie occurs and like team building, and that's where your friendships are made. It's when you're hanging out with your friends after all the activities of the day and you're sitting in the cabin chilling, and then you decide, oh, let's like go get ice cream. You know, it's like those spur of the moment things that I've been missing out on. And it's just kind of like, I don't know. it just wouldn't be the same experience. Like, I've dealt with stuff like that before, where they're like, oh, it's inclusive, it's inclusion, like, you're gonna be included, like, you know, but you have to be separate at the same time. It's like fake inclusion. So you end up not having the same experience as a kid because you're separated from the other kids still. And like, it just causes awkwardness and like, I don't know. It's just, yeah. So I decided to end up not going to that camp because I just knew it was gonna be awkward. I had experienced stuff like that before, just like in school and just like other summer activities, summer day camps that I had been to. And so I just knew I would not end up having much fun and I wouldn't be able to make many friends. So I decided not to go. Looking back on it, I wish I would have gone because, I mean, you know, when you're in middle school, you care more about what other people think. And so, yeah, I mean, it's middle school brain. You know, you think everyone cares about what you're doing and all that stuff, when really they don't. They care too much about what they think other people think of them. They don't really care about you. But, you know, when you're in 6th grade, you're awkward. So, yeah. Well, anyway, the takeaway from all of this, number 1, if you're a disabled kid, go to summer camp. Whether it be a camp specifically geared towards disabled children or a camp that is not, either way, go to camp. It's really important. You learn a lot about yourself and you also make a lot of really great friends. So definitely go to summer camp if you're able to. Secondly, camps that are not specifically for disabled kids should figure out ways to adapt the activities and also include disabled children in their mainstream camp, because inclusion is important for everyone. Also, a lot of times camps that aren't specifically designed for disabled kids usually have a lot of different activities, and they're also usually geared towards like a specific activity. So like, for example, the music camp, the camp I went to for disabled kids, they didn't have any music programs, and there wasn't a camp for disabled child musicians. It wasn't a thing. So my only option was to go to this other camp where I would learn a lot about music, but it wasn't a camp specifically designed for disabled kids, and a lot of it was not adapted for disabled children because it wasn't designed for disabled kids. But that camp should have included disabled kids by adapting their program so disabled kids could participate. But because it wasn't, a lot of disabled kids didn't have the same opportunities as their non-disabled peers. So anyway, those are my thoughts on summer camp. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click that little bell button down below to receive a notification the next time I upload a video. I hope you have a phenomenal day, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys. You're so cute. I got your ball? Yay! Good boy. Hey, oh gosh. But every elevator from the